All right. Good morning. I am Jessie Raspiller, founder of Ventura Pop-Up Yoga, and I'm so excited. I'm sitting here with Lauren Snyder today, and sitting here meaning relative, how we get to do it in quarantine days, right? And this beautiful woman who I barely have gotten to see this year, just because of life and how we've all been going through things. So I'm really excited to sit down with Lauren though, because I've known her for 5 years. When did you start with pop-up yoga?
It's been a while now. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 years at this point.
Yeah. And I think I've shared this with you before, but I always remember you coming to my Monday and Wednesday and Friday classes at Marina Park. And almost every week she'd have a different color hair. And I just was like, loved like how each day she showed up as a different version of herself. And that's what I'm excited to share with you guys today too, is all these pieces of Lauren that I've gotten to see over the years and the adventures that her and I have gone on, and the intimate conversations that we shared. So yeah, say hi real quick to everybody, and then we'll dive in with the juicy questions for the day.
All right, sounds good. Hi everybody. I'm Lauren Snyder, and yeah, I started out as a student, and actually another pop-up teacher, Melissa Kelly, who I was friends with prior. Our kids were friends. She mentioned this amazing outdoor yoga community that she was a part of and told me to come check it out, try it out. And yeah, I went to one class and was pretty much hooked at that point. I'm a big outdoor person. So that idea of practicing outside, under the sunshine in the grass was just like, oh, this is for me. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I've basically been here ever since, and then
You
decided
have.
to try out once I got my teacher training.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, I'm going to come back into your yoga story as we kind of dissolve all the other pieces of who you are, because we know these sort of off the mat series are getting us into the good news. And I do want to explore who you are as a yoga teacher, because I think your story is really unique. But I want to start back in the beginning, just like we did with Cam and Lauren. I kind of like to just know like where you guys came from. And I know you're from Ojai. So I'm just curious, as somebody who's only lived here for 10 years, what was it like? And I imagine it being magic, but what was it like growing up in Ojai and like back when life was a little bit quieter in these little beach areas and, the high area of Ojai?
So my family actually has been in Ojai for 3 generations. My husband's family has been here for just as long. And our fathers actually grew up next door to each other for a portion of their lives. Our grandfathers built houses right next door to each other. So very
I don't think I
small
knew
town.
that's awesome.
Yes, I have a picture of my dad and my father-in-law waiting for the bus on the first day of kindergarten. So yeah, it's
Oh my
lots of
gosh.
family history. Our parents went to high school together. But I grew up in Upper Ojai, which for those people who are familiar with the area is slightly outside of Ojai. It's more ranches and larger properties like that, more spaced out. And yeah, I grew up on a family ranch and yeah, ran around barefoot pretty much 90% of my life. For anybody who follows me on Instagram, hence the barefoot part of my name. But yeah, it just I was a kid that I grew up running around outside. I loved digging in the dirt. I loved imagination, all this stuff. Very artsy fartsy kid, very creative. My poor mother had white walls and white carpet, and I was a kid going, "Can I just draw on the walls with markers? Can I just
So
something
not
really?"
much has really changed, right? Because that's who you are today.
No, yeah, it's pretty much the same. And now I have a daughter who does the same thing. So
Oh.
I have a new appreciation for why my mom was like, no more drawing on the wall.
Awesome. So what was and I just, from your and I's experience, we've done some hiking up by like where you went to school and stuff. And what was it like being in a smaller community? I mean, I consider Ojai still a fairly small community other than the tourism that we have coming in and out the weekends. But Upper Ojai really, was like being that ranch community. It's a lot more sprawled between neighbors and stuff. Like, what was that like going to a smaller school?
It was a lot of fun. It was I feel like we got away with a little bit more. And especially back when I was a kid, we would go for hikes. We had a trail right by the school, and yeah, they would take groups of kids, or the whole school was small enough. We would just go hiking up the trails. And I had a fourth grade teacher who loved the outdoors. He loved plants. And to this day, most of the kids in my elementary school class that I still keep in touch with, we can name a handful of local plants just because he would point them out, he would describe them, we would draw them, we would talk about them. And so, it's really beautiful that I've had that opportunity to just engage with the land that I was growing up on. And that's been a huge part of my growth and my story, and reconnecting with like local plants, and reconnecting with the earth, and hiking and stuff like that. It really started when I was a kid, because my dad was a big backpacker. He was a Boy Scout as a kid, and he sort of instilled that in me. And then, having a teacher like that who really wanted to make it important to get outside and to get connected, and to know what plants were okay and what plants were, poison oak. And it was great, because, you thought we were halfway paying attention, but I look back and I'm like, I'm in my 30s now, and I can point out all these different plants, and I'm like, fourth grade.
Yeah, I love that. And, I have a little bit of that from my childhood too. Like, I grew up in a smaller community, and I remember I was always out in the desert. So it's completely different. But I love that some of the stuff that I've loved with the time that we've spent together is you've really shared with me the plant love, the wonderful trails that that I would never have been able to uncover. And to me, that's part of the magic of like growing up in this area. One of the other things that I really admire about you, and even though I'm a nature buff, like I've never had the guts to do, is that you will go on backpacking trips by yourself, and sometimes barefoot, right?
I don't do as much backpacking stuff I do a lot of long hikes by myself. But I love to hike barefoot. I have, like I said, I grew up running around barefoot, and I've had people stop me before and go, doesn't that hurt? But for me, I don't know what it is. It's just, as soon as the shoes come off, I can connect fully. I can experience it. I don't recommend.
Part of you is like in that soil. So it's like I just see you like connecting with yourself in essence, because you just been there your whole life.
Well, and I tell people, I'm like, if you're going to try it, take your shoes, try little bits at a time, because it does, in the times in my life where I've stopped for a while, it's like you go to do it the first time and you go, oh, it is a little painful. It is uncomfortable, but there's something really beautiful, I think, for just being able to remove the barrier, to remove any sort of anything between you and the earth. And so for me, that's walking around barefoot. And my son was 2 years old, and I'd pack up his stroller and we'd hike for 8 miles, and 80% of it I'm running around without shoes.
I love that. And I love that visualization of like just that barrier, like something we never think about so often, especially in yoga, we talk about the barriers being this sort of, intangible things, but this is an actual barrier where we could like get into the earth. I mean, we think about it when we go to the beach, we all walk around barefoot, right? And it's like, it makes sense to transfer that out in other ways too, because that connection that you have with the soil. So one of the other things that I know about you is that you've been off on a deep study with herbs and sort of plant medicine. And you've also been somebody that's opened my eyes up into this in recent years. And often when we've been off hiking, and you're either sharing the plants with me or something that you're growing in your backyard. So what does that journey look like for you? And how did you get there from fourth grade to Lauren today, to really, I know you have a whole apothecary cabinet in your house, which is like, oh my goodness, that's so amazing. But I wouldn't know where to start with all of that. So how do you go from fourth grade you to like curiosity and knowing names of plants to like creating beautiful things to sustain your family with?
Bit by bit.
Okay, that's a good,
It's
that makes me feel better actually.
little pieces by little pieces. It really has been, truthfully, a lot of things have kind of fallen into place. You know, it was listening to a podcast and hearing about a book about plants and going, oh, that sounds really interesting. And then wandering around Bart's books in Ojai and going, that's the book. And, you know, picking it up. And so it was these little things that kept getting set in my way that kind of led me to going, I think I'm really actually very interested in this. And it was actually braiding sweetgrass. If I know it's a really popular thing, a lot of people are reading it right now, Robin Wall Kimmerer. And that book changed my life as far as like how much I wanted to dive in, because when I read that book and the way she talks about plants, the way she talks about reciprocity with the earth and gratitude for the gift, I've always loved gardening and I've always loved plants, but it completely shifted my relationship. And now it's like, instead of just sticking stuff in soil and saying, okay, let's see what happens, you know, it's more about talking to my plants. And my kids ask our plants permission to harvest. You know, there's a lot of, you know, this sort of energetic exchange and understanding. And I'll go out and sit with a plant and just kind of notice every little detail about it. I really, in a lot of ways, it deepened a lot of just my life practice, but also in funny ways, my yoga practice, because when you sit there and stare at a plant and notice, what does it smell like? What are the leaves? What is the shape of the leaves? And in the study that I'm doing, it's a lot about holistic stuff. It's a lot about taking the entirety of a person's constitution and their condition and noticing how that shifts. And also for me, I got really curious about it because, you know, I'm not shy about it. Most people know that I have autoimmune disease and I have chronic illness, and I'm still in the process of actually uncovering a lot of what's going on with my body. You know, we have some diagnoses, but we also have some stuff that's I'm still trying to figure out why it's happening. And for me, having that empowerment of knowing plants that can support me during acute situations, or that can support reducing inflammation, things like that, that come to my day-to-day health, really gave me a sense of autonomy and empowerment over my journey with my healing. And so for me, it was a huge thing for myself. You know, I did it selfishly to start to just kind of, I want to feel better. I want something that can support me when I have insomnia, things like that. And then it sort of expanded. And like I said, when I read Robin's book, it was just this, oh my gosh, this is how I felt as a kid running around the hills. Like I talked to the plant.
Full circle. And what I heard when you were saying, it was like, you know, it's like almost a meditation practice that you're doing when you're with your plants. And something you said, and I can't remember it now, but it just like, I heard that union, you know, we talk about so much, and that word has been so overplayed in the yoga world this last year, of like how it symbolizes union. But to me, what you just shared is the actuality of the union that we speak of in yoga. It's that full connection into yourself, because you can't connect with a plant if you're not fully aware and connected to yourself, and, you know, even something from a higher space. And it's like to be able to open up, you know, a communication in a way with a plant. And, you know, and it's like we start to kind of go off the deep end when we start talking about these things, but there is so much beauty when you pause yourself, the chaos, these things that we all get buried into. And it's like, you know, it's like what you're sharing to me is like, it's the yoga off the mat. It's like how we living, breathing, and integrate all of this beauty that we feel when we roll out a mat into our everyday life. And it's like, it's that union. And it's like when we have that union, and it's like anything's possible to transfer and to connect with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So bringing that kind of into yoga, because I know you've had a long yoga journey. And I know it's been very much intertwined in your life. How old were you when you started your first yoga practice?
So I was thinking about that the other day, and it's a bit fuzzy because when I was a kid, my best friend's mom was a yoga teacher. She had been, I think, since the 70s. So it was something I was exposed to a lot growing up, a lot of different elements. And I just found out the other day, I thought my mom had started practicing when I was in high school, but she had been practicing yoga since I was a kid. And she, Ojai yoga's been around for a long time in this area in particular. A lot of yoga studios here. And so, yeah, she goes, "Oh, I was going to yoga classes when you were in elementary school." And so it was really a part of my life growing up, but I was probably in high school or just out of high school when I took my first actual class, and my best friend's mom was my first official teacher.
What
And
was
it
that first experience like? Or even if it's not your first, but your first sort of memorable experience? Because it all kind of gets fuzzy when we've practiced for so long, but like, what was that first experience
I
like? Was it a love or just like, why are we doing
no,
this?
I actually I kind of hated it when I first started.
I'm not alone.
So what a lot of people may not know about me is I suffered from severe anxiety and depression as a high school student. From 13 to 16, I was barely functioning. I actually barely graduated high school because I was missing so much school and I was struggling so much. Um, and yoga started to make its way into my life. My mom, she was an amazing support system, and she was one of those people who was like, "Okay, let's take you to a therapist. Let's see if there's a medication that can help you. Also, let's go to a Reiki practitioner and let's go do yoga and let's do." She wanted to pull from everywhere and sort of see what stuck. And so, she started to kind of introduce these elements of yoga. And at that time, I was, I was kind of frustrated. All I can remember is in my bedroom, because my mom, after I moved out at 18, converted my room into this little yoga studio that she could have her friends over and they could all do yoga. To this day, my old childhood bedroom is still a yoga studio.
Mom's like, "We're gonna miss you, but come back for yoga."
Bye. And my best friend's mom was teaching, like, I think 3 of us. And I loved it because she was teaching us Warrior 2. But when I tell you she made me hold Warrior 2 for the longest I have ever held Warrior 2, because she was like, shift your hand, adjust your hand. She was making me sort of feel into my body and feel the subtle elements. But 18-year-old me was like, how long do I have to hold my arm out? I am going to die. And it was just this moment of, it's so funny because I look back and I'm like, I hated it. And I know I was complaining out loud the whole time, but something clicked. Something was like, there's something to this connection with your body. There is something to this practice that asks you to pay attention to all the little details. And so that journey of, kind of everybody around me supporting me, because it was a very much like, I really didn't even know much about yoga studios. It was like my friends and my family did this practice together. But every time we did it, it was in somebody's room or somebody's garage or somebody, I wasn't introduced to it through a yoga studio.
Like mainstream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. It's like, because and it sounds like you're, us being teachers now and like having that digestible experience that we had to go through and decide like, what are we going to do with this? Right. It's like, that was a challenge that I never want to do again. Yet here we are, and it's like, I feel like that's where so many people come into, and now there's so much preconceived notion around what yoga is. So there's so many barriers to entry, and just kind of coming back to your shoe idea too. And it's like removing some of those barriers as we do in yoga and really creating space for everybody to come in. And I feel like that's something that you are just so versed in, and have been studying just as much as all your herbology over the last year or two. And it's like, share a little bit about that and how taking like your first yoga experience and it being this like warrior two breakout down for, I'm seeing like 20 minutes, you were probably in that warrior two for 20 minutes. I mean, we're just,
I have
like,
no
that's what it
idea.
feels like, right? And you know, take now like what you're starting to create, and maybe even share now is a good time to dive in with what you'll be sharing with the pop-up community coming up. So
Yeah.
just share.
So, um, you know, initially my yoga practice really supported my mental health in a lot of ways. And so I could get on my mat, I could move, I could go through the sequences, and that was a really great way to move my body, get out of my head, you know, start to pay attention to what was going on inside. And then I had my first child when I was 24. And about 6, 8 months after I had my son, I was diagnosed with Crohn's. And that was kind of my first diagnosis with autoimmune disease. And at that time, my body was in such bad shape that physically I was just like, oh, I can't practice yoga. I'm broken. I can't do the postures. I can't do the classes. Like, it's just too much right now. And so I stopped for a long time, and I sort of would go when I felt good, and then I wouldn't go if I didn't feel my best. And when I did come back, it was still an element of sort of trying to figure out how I could even keep up with this. And, you know, I, to this day, still tell people about our class. We were on retreat on Santa Cruz for one of the Venture Well retreats. And I was gung-ho, I was ready to go for sunrise yoga. And we got up there, and I don't know what happened, but my whole body just shut down. I felt awful. And I took child's pose for 90% of the class. And you just came over and you checked in on me, and you just placed your hands on my back and let me be exactly as I was. And it was okay. It was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't have to do what everybody around me is doing to feel the benefit, to feel connected to the class. It doesn't have to look the same. And so that was kind of, I think that was a little bit of a turning point for me, as far as, you know, I sort of had it in my head. You have to keep up with the class. You have to do everything they're doing. You can modify a little bit if it's offered, but, you know, you really have to do it this way to get yoga. And when I had my daughter, I had another relapse, and I ended up pretty much on my couch for like 6 months. And it was at that point that I was like, there's got to be something else. Like, there's got to be something more. And I started to kind of explore props and variations and a little bit. And I really started to kind of invite that into my own personal practice. And I'm one of those people, I don't have a lot of, I don't worry too much. Like, I'm like, oh, no, can't do that. I will take this variation or whatever. Like, I'm just one of those people that, like, that doesn't work for me, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I love about you too is like, you are so tuned into your body, you know, out of the result of where you're at, you really have to be to kind of like watch for, I guess I'd call them kind of like those mile markers of like, you know, gauging where your body's at and where you need to readjust to, you know, maintain a harmony, I guess is the word I'm going for. But on that same retreat, I think it was the same one. So Lauren came out to many of our yoga in the wild retreats on the Channel Islands. And I love that. And it's, you know, really where we got to know each other in those intimate spaces. But coming back to your barefoot days, that was one of the first times I saw you barefoot, was another one of those journeys. And I think it was maybe the second retreat, because yeah, we had that experience the first time under the full moon at sunrise. And then I think it was the next retreat where I knew a little bit of your story and I knew how you needed to watch your body. And we woke up for another sunrise yoga session and realized when we got there that Lauren had woke up with us, but she wasn't there at practice. And just trusting she's very, you know, able to take care of herself in the wild. And she wandered over barefoot after practice and just said hi. And like, I was taking care of my body and kind of just found yoga in a different way. And I think that's something too that we realize when we find, like we were talking about with the plant connection, that union and stuff, when we really start to become familiar with our bodies, we know and can find like that practice where whether it's, doing poses or, being outside and like taking, if you're a runner and it's like, if we really know our body, like running might not be what we need to do every day. And maybe it's just a stroll in the park, or maybe it's a nap that particular day, right? I struggle with that side of things sometimes, like the pulling it back. And then, what you're sharing too with the yoga practices, like we have that same invitation, and it's not always apparent, especially when we have newcomers. And it's something that we as teachers can like say, like, take this option, but we feel that, and I was guilty of it too, and like you're saying too. And it's like we see what everybody else is doing, and we're often so unaware of our bodies at that point that we don't even know if we're struggling. And so what I love about what you're offering and about to bring out to the pop-up community is really your own self-awareness that you have, mind, body, and spirit, and being able to bring a language to that for others, and to be able to share with them through cueing and through life experience of like, how do you feel, maybe when you need to take something else, and what that looks like. um so yeah, just kind of sending it back to you from that note of, um, what will this sort of next chapter for your teaching look like?
So coming in March, I'm going to be the featured teacher here at Pop-Up. And some of the things that I'm kind of bringing in is two things. We're going to, shift my weekly class a little bit to bring it back to sort of these foundations, this element of tuning in and listening to the body. And if anybody's taken my class recently, they know, like, when I offer a pose, I'm like, oh, here's 7 ways you can do it. If you get into number 7 and you go, nope, that's not going to work, come back to number 5 or try number 6 or try number 2. They're all the same. They're just different variations of basically the same essence of a pose. Mm-hmm. So really kind of what I wanted to do and kind of what I wanted to bring was this idea of, we had a long discussion about sort of sustainable foundations, and what elements can nourish us and nurture us in a practice, in a way that we can then feel confident and comfortable to make those judgment calls no matter what class we're in. Mm-hmm. Because we can have amazing teachers, and there's times I look at my practice that I just taught and went, I forgot to offer this to people, or I didn't say this out loud. I know it, but maybe my students didn't know it, and a lot of times, like, we have so much information in our heads that we can offer as teachers, but we don't have that much time in a 60-minute class to be like, by the way, so I think what I'm really keying in for my classes this month is this sort of building upon these sustainable foundations and giving people these tools, whether they're beginners, whether they're coming back from an injury, whether they are, their body's going through some kind of change. Because for me, that was, I had a discussion with somebody at one point that, if you're privileged enough to not be disabled yet, because our bodies at some point in our lives will start to change and may start to slow down in ways that we weren't expecting.
Well, even today, I have a kink in my neck. I know how to adjust my practice, but in years past, I'd probably be like, well, I can't do chaturanga today, so I can't go to yoga, right? And that's what we hear from our students often of like, oh, I'm gonna, I can't come today because, such as, of course, we want you to be cleared by a medical professional. We don't want you to be in pain. But what Lauren's really getting into sharing is, how can we adapt our practice with where we are right now? And also getting to know where it is that we are right now, whether it's a kinked neck from how you slept on your pillow that probably wasn't fluffed right, to you know, having a life altering injury or something that really shifts in your body. So I want to share with just our community, since they know you from, you know, all these avenues. You know, you taught with us strongly for a year, and then quarantine really kicked all of our butts. But you know, it's because of your vulnerability with your own body and wellness. You've been very mindful of taking a step back from being out in the public teaching and switched to Zoom over the last few months. So if we have a new student coming in, why do you think they would benefit from this practice?
I think one thing that I really try to think of my style, I guess, or my flavor of what I'm doing is I help you put tools in your toolkit. I help you create these foundations, these supports that can really be applied to a lot of different things. And so what I want to do is I want to give people that confidence to know that, you know, oh, I've got this understanding of these things. Kind of bringing in the second element of what I'm doing a workshop with props. And we all kind of have a basic understanding of props. We're like, oh, block makes sense. Oh, strap, I know what to do with those. But something from my own practice that's come out very clearly to me in the past year, especially like having done a specifically accessible yoga training and done some personal work of needing props, because this last year was very difficult for my health. There's beautiful little tiny things you'd never even think of that pop up, like how to place your props around your mat to make it as easy and seamless to pull them into a posture so you don't even have to break your flow.
Getting out of flow.
So you're not going,
yeah,
wait, hang on a second, I need to grab my straps. Like for me, that was a game changer. Once I sort of found a flow and I found a way to arrange my props so that I could just grab and go without even thinking about it, suddenly props became this empowering tool.
So that makes me think of like a lot of our able-bodied students too. Like we talked about too, how a lot of us teachers are really starting to cue with blocks and props to encourage students to bring them, because I don't do my practice without props anymore. And I'm in this for 16 years, but I didn't learn that until 10 years ago, of like how beautiful they are. So what could you say to speak to those experienced practitioners of like why you feel fundamentally having props on hand and getting to know them more intimately than maybe just, you know, side angle pose or something like that? Like, why would an experienced yoga really want to come in and get to know more intimacy with their props?
So it's interesting, this stigma around props being a crutch or being for people who can't do the posture. But it's funny, I follow a lot of teachers and learn from a lot of teachers who are actually very advanced in their asana practice, and some of them are very flexible. And they love props because there's so many creative ways to use them. And for people who want to explore different elements of a prop, so let's say, for example, you, I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Let's say you come down into forward fold and you can flatten totally in half and you're like, ta-da, here's where I'm at. And you want to explore that in a different way or in a deeper way. You can stand on blocks and bring yourself up away from the floor, which allows you to reach a little bit more, go a little deeper. Same thing if you're doing a seated forward fold. If you reach past your feet and your hands are just kind of hanging out in space, pop a block at the end of your feet and hold onto that block and allow yourself to just release into the pose and not be kind of holding yourself out here.
Yeah. It's almost like it lets, what I'm hearing you say and what I see in my own practice is it's almost like it allows the body to surrender so that it can actually get where it needs to be, rather than us struggling so much to like try to make the poses fit our bodies because every day is so different. It's like props actually just let us surrender.
And you know, I recently brought in a lot more of like the Yoga Sutra and talking about asana being steady and comfortable. Well,
Mm.
one of the ways that we can make that steadiness, make that comfort, is using props and then allowing the mind, what is it, releasing any tension and allowing the mind to contemplate the infinite. So it's like props allow you to let go of any of that strain or tension, whether it's because we we need that support, or because we are in that, but we're still kind of energetically like holding it.
Yeah.
Props can let you let go of that. And then all of a sudden it's like, now I can really go inside and think about, like, what am I noticing? What am I feeling? Or simply be with that sensation instead of trying to manipulate it with your body.
I feel like we just brought it all the way back full circle to that union. Just
Yeah.
like you with the plants, just like you with the bare feet. It's like props bring you into that union within your practice then, in a way.
And I think too, for me at least, there's that really beautiful element, and then there's the playfulness.
Yes.
I love the playfulness of props. My favorite example is doing Warrior 2 in a chair. Is a whole different experience. If you've never experienced it, like, go grab a chair and sit down and try to do Warrior 2 in a chair.
Are you on a chair that you could show us real quick?
I'm not on a chair. I've got arm things on.
We'll have you do some pictures on Instagram later.
I'll do some pictures for sure. Okay. Because it is, when we're standing, there's so much energy and emphasis put on the lower half of the body, and we're, lining up the hips, and we're pressing into the feet. And when you sit yourself down in a chair and you release the bottom half of the body to the chair, suddenly you're aware of everything happening up here. Suddenly you're aware of exactly how your shoulder's sitting and how your arm feels when it's hanging out in space. And so there's that playfulness. I love props just to play and go, how the heck does it feel to do this posture up against a wall or in a chair or with a block? Because I'm curious about, I think a lot of us, we can be told something over and over again, but sometimes it's that random moment where we play with something, or we have a teacher that goes, try this slightly different. And you go, oh, ooh, that works really great for my body. And I would have, so it's the curiosity, the
letting that inner child come out that's always dying to come out of us. But we were like, no, we need to act and do and be and like hit this yoga posture. And it's like, oh no, 5-year-old Jesse's like, we're gonna like dance in this yoga class. And 5-year-old Lauren's like, we're gonna get blocks and props, and like we're gonna end up standing on our head, but we're not even on our head because we're so propped. It's like getting just like that's the freedom, right? When we can come back to that innocence. So just as we kind of bring this full circle, because I love where we've come, share a little bit about your foundation that you're supporting this month, so we can bring some beautiful awareness to what you've been doing and everything that they have to offer as an extension.
Yeah, so the organization I chose is actually Accessible Yoga International. They're the organization that I did my accessible yoga training in. I've done now over 50 hours with them, working on different variations of how to continue to open up yoga space to more people. I love them for a lot of reasons, and I really wanted to support them because number one, it actually was founded in Santa Barbara. So
local company.
It's local, but at this point is a worldwide organization that supports accessibility in yoga. So it's kind of exciting that it's, homegrown, but is worldwide at this point. And I also love that they are constantly trying to create access for teachers as well. So a lot of their trainings, if you cannot pay for it, or if you need a scholarship, they always try to accommodate people, even if it's really challenging. Like, they really go beyond what they need to really create. And
so they're living and breathing, really, that accessibility.
Living and breathing. I know they have a training coming up in May, and awesome. It's all online now. So, if you can't make the live times, you can go afterwards, and they have live captioning and stuff like that. So they really embody that as a resource for teachers. And I feel like it's one of those that can then filter down. And you don't have to be a teacher to take their trainings either. So students can take their trainings and build some of those tools for themselves as well. So
yeah. And
yeah,
I love that too, because that's, you know, an invitation still to for students to play with their curiosity in their yoga practice, which is how most of us ended up becoming yoga teachers. And we're like, a light bulb's going off here. I need to understand this more. And we sign up for a teacher training, and then whabam, 6 years later, pop-up yoga is going, and my students are now teaching with us. And it's like, and it's beautiful. And so, yeah, we'll include some information on their website so you guys can find them. And then of course, on Lauren's teacher feature page, we'll have their information there, as well as how you can support the foundation for the people who are going through scholarships. So, you know, just because an organization is offering a scholarship doesn't mean that they, you know, don't have to still pay bills and to create the own foundational stuff that they need to continue to grow their organization. So I'm really excited to support this foundation this year, not this year, this month, and to grow the awareness around everything that you're doing and that they're doing locally and now globally, because it is a huge message this last year that we've all opened up even further, and creating that accessibility on all the levels for everybody. So any last little things to share? When can they find you on the schedule?
Yes, I am teaching Tuesday evenings at 6 p.m. Online right now. And I just want to encourage people, if you're burnout on Zoom or you're kind of hesitant, like, we have fun. I invite questions during class if you want them. You know, I tell people, light a candle, go in your backyard, go in your living room, go in your kitchen. I had someone recently that, you know, just turned off all the lights in their bedroom, turned off their camera, and just made it super relaxing and comfortable for themselves. So play with it, whatever works for you, have fun.
And be curious.
Yeah, and be curious and explore. So yeah, I'm excited. Tuesdays at 6.
Yeah, we're so excited to bring this out, because fundamental yoga for all is how you're going to find that on the schedule, and really kind of rebooting what Lauren's already been doing, but bringing it this new beautiful awareness around why this is important for all of us. You know, even us who've been practicing for years, like, these are things that we need to come back to time and time again. And I'm so excited to have this offering. And she'll be offering this as sort of a mini series where it's like, if you miss week 1, it's okay. You can still get 2 and 4. And then maybe next month you come back to week 1, and she'll be kind of working some themes in there that we'll let you guys know online and through the app. So get you some Tuesday night yoga with Lauren starting the first week in March. So awesome. This was so much fun. I feel like I know you so well, but I still got some like fun little nuggets out of you today. So if you guys have any questions for Lauren too, all of her information will be on her teacher feature page that you can pop in there and reach out to her. Are you doing privates at all?
I open it up, you know, okay. I'm kind of one of those people that I don't put it out there, but if somebody wants to do a class or do some sessions together and explore deeper into specific situations, I'm always up for it.
Cool. I love that. Yeah. So she's an incredible resource for you guys. If you woke up with a kinky neck like that sounds funny. You know, there's abilities to move through our practice and live and breathe it. So thank you for spending some time with me today. And I can't wait to share Lauren with you guys all month.
Perfect. Thank you.